long journey. In the last 2, 3 years, I've more been doing consulting. So I'm just helping property owners to set up and manage and develop systems for their own Airbnb business so they can have more freedom, know where to invest their money, know how to run it, on their chosen lifestyle. Because I always say the magic is you can design your lifestyle with Airbnb. You just
Mm.
hire the people to do the things you don't want to do so you can kind of set your schedule.
Okay, so I want to catch refocus on something real quick that you said. You said you visited 20 countries during this time frame as a digital nomad. Okay,
Yes.
what was the so just for my sake, what was the best one?
Oh man. Well, Brazil always wins.
Okay,
Brazil always wins. But I would say I really, really, really loved Turkey also. That
okay,
was amazing. And Italy, of course, and India are always at the top, I'd say as
wow.
well.
So for the reason why I asked that is because we were doing this podcast virtually, obviously, but we're doing it where Lawrence actually home based out of Brazil right now at this point in time. So that makes this even more of a special tool that we're actually getting an opportunity to speak to someone who has creatively set themselves up to feel that they don't have to worry about anything, but they got things set up to help people out best as much as they can. So, okay, let's go back and talk about exactly how much how much should someone actually who's thinking about getting started into doing Airbnb, how much money do they actually need to have up front to get started?
Amazing. So I would say that really varies upon what you already have and
Hmm.
what your structure is going to be. And I'll give you a few examples here. So let's say I have a fully furnished home and I'm like, you know what, I'm working remotely or I'm taking a break. I want to go travel a bit and put my house on Airbnb. The investment is going to be very tiny because you have everything set up. Maybe you just buy some fresh bedding and do a deep clean, right? So that's a small investment. If on the opposite end, if you're going to be renting a place or buying a place just to do Airbnb and the place is empty, you have no furniture, you have no bedding, you need to start up with security deposit, all that kind of thing. Depending where you are and how thrifty you want to be, getting secondhand furniture, bargain hunting, I usually say that number is between and $12,000.
Okay, so now 5 to 12, so 5 to 12K is based on actually like being like a subletter of the property that you're actually doing the hosting from.
Yeah, and I can break that down super simply. So let's say we're doing a new Airbnb in Virginia, our
Okay.
favorite place. Let's just use Richmond for example, right? Richmond doesn't have super high property; it's pretty affordable. So let's say we get like a really, you know, decent, nice, kind of clean apartment uh, for $1,000 a month, right? So we have
Okay.
$1,000 first month's rent, $1,000 security deposit, and then easily, 1,000 to 3,000 with furniture, bedding, utilities, Wi-Fi, and maybe doing some small repairs. So you could get super thrifty on that. You could, like I said, if you have an SUV, you could stay on Craigslist on Let Go and really furnish cheaply. Bedding is usually going to be one of the standard investments that is at least $400.
Right. Okay. Okay. So now that is so I just want to kind of like break this down a little bit more. So basically,
Sure.
let's say okay, so basically right now currently a for rent by owner who may have a property that's on the market as vacant and they're looking for a tenant comes in say, hey, for rent by owner, Mr. Buyer, I really want to rent your home, but then I want to also be able to be afforded the opportunity to sublet it. So I'm going to make sure that you get your rent each month, but then everything else beyond that is their profit after they whatever they put in. Say first month deposit, and then they rent at the end of the month, and then whatever they spend to actually furnish the property the way they need to, which is about $3,000, $4,000 based on what's going on, and then boom, that you're almost open for business right away.
Yes, exactly. And I can give you a few points as well for talking to landlords about why Airbnb is actually in their benefit.
Wow,
Um,
let's talk about it.
yeah. So, I mean, like a lot of people will, when they approach you have it right on the nose. It's like approaching buy owner rentals is going to be a little bit better than property manager, because they're going to property management companies, because they're going to have, legal standards that they've
Hmm.
presented to all their clients. But if you're doing it someone who owns it, that's kind of how you want to start if you're going to start off right the bat with the sublet. There are luxury apartments that let you do Airbnb, but you have to kind of seek those out as well. So yeah, you can basically say, look, I'm going to put really strict rules on my Airbnb. I'm going to put, and you can tell them, I'm going to say quiet hours are from this time to this time, no parties. You can let them know what rules you have in mind. I'm going to put strict rules because I don't want anyone, messing up my furniture, my investment, right? You can also let them know, this apartment's going to be cleaned, anywhere from 3 to 10 times a month. Do you have any other tenants that are gonna deep clean your property 10 times a month?
That is absolutely true.
Yeah,
Absolutely true.
and then you can also make this kind of barter with them and say, "Look, I'll take care of all these repairs a normal tenant wouldn't do. I'll do the plumbing, I'll do the light bulbs, I mean, I'll do the garbage disposal." You can take on a certain, gift to them, kind of like a trade, right? "I'll
Right.
take on these repairs, so you'll never hear from me. My rent check will always be on time. I'll pay you a week in advance." You can
Mm,
kind of start to offer some things that they know, like, they're definitely getting paid because you're getting paid. You're taking optimal care of their property, and you're in there, taking care of it as well.
right. Okay. So that is also so someone who's listening to this doesn't is I think one of the things that people think of when they think about Airbnb is they say, hey, I got to buy a property first, an investment property to get started in this. But you have like kind of already outlined the blueprint on you don't necessarily need the property. You just need to have the intellect to have the conversation about somebody else letting you borrow their property to do the air host to be an Airbnb host.
Absolutely. And I would recommend making a little list of those tips I just suggested, and you kind of write down what you're willing to offer. A lot of people who do this will offer the homeowner a little bit more than what they're asking. So they'll say,
Right.
by the way, I'll give you an extra 200 a month, and I'll put this many months up front. I mean, I don't technically recommend that, but you could offer, 3 months rent up front. You could always keep in front of it and let them, you can even do shorter contracts with them, like, look, we'll do 6 months, and if you're not happy, then I'll leave, right? So you make like really attractive terms for the owner. Sometimes people will offer a percentage of sales, but I recommend just kind of doing like an upfront bribe,
Right.
because you need to keep track of all your expenses in such a detailed way, right? And I think
Yeah,
it's just
because
more.
yeah, net leasing is terrible. I don't even know who came up with the idea of net leasing. That is the worst thing ever because then you got to always remember, like you said, you got to keep track of everything and make sure that you're giving a percentage of it. No, I wouldn't agree to that either. That's
Yeah, and then you also gotta let them know how much you're making, which you really,
right.
if
You
you're
really don't want
making
to open the
bank.
books to nobody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. So that is awesome. Okay. So we've already outlined how you can get started with the lowest minimum cost to you. Let's talk about basically once you've identified that and you found the property because you found a property owner who may want to work with you in this idea at least for 6 months. What's next? What should the person who's actually looking to invest actually look to do next? What should they be worried about anything legally first, or should they be doing their research to see if it's even well? Before let's back up because I feel like there should be some research done first before you approach a property owner about actually getting into the business with them of actually being a subletter.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I definitely have some foundational points here. Um, Based on your last question, I'll just add two more quick points. Is that the investment can definitely be between five and $15,000, very easily. But I also recommend hosts if they have a spare room, if they have a back house, if they have a family property, if they have let's say it's kind of a half empty property, or maybe you want to become a big Airbnb investor and you and your partner kind of stay at each other's homes, maybe just move in together temporarily, Airbnb the other place. There's never a problem to start small. There's never a problem to start with a available space, even if you're doing a partnership with someone. Like, let's say you have a buddy that has a spare room, he works, he's never really home. you only rent out the spare room on the days that he's gone, right? And you have some kind of thing. So you get familiar with it because there is,
Right.
yeah, and then you get more comfortable. You get the eyes for it. You're able to evaluate how the flow is, and then you'll feel more confident to expand. So I always say, it doesn't hurt to start small with low investment on a space already available to you or someone in your network.
Yeah, it gives you the muscle memory. I see what you're saying. Like it basically makes you feel confident in what you're doing to move into a bigger expansion, like you already based it off of. So yeah, that makes sense. I like that.
Yeah, and it's definitely going to enhance your creativity too, because then you feel more comfortable, you feel like you know what you're doing, and then you can allow yourself to expand bigger based on the practical knowledge you already have. Because if you
Yes.
haven't ran an Airbnb before, you have I wouldn't dreaming as big as possible, can only go so far when you have
Right.
little experience. Yeah, so definitely I highly recommend people to do research. So here I'm going to get like a tiny bit technical, but if you have a little bit of real estate knowledge, this may be very basic to you. So we have what's known as the primary residence, which is where, the government has your driver's license or your ID, your tax, this is the residence that the government thinks that that's where you live, right? So with Airbnb and short-term rentals, it's called STR, the initials for short. So when you're Googling, you're basically looking for STR regulations. That's going to be There's going to be different laws for primary residence in a lot of states and a lot of cities. So if it's your primary residence, it's where you live most of the year, and you're putting it on Airbnb. In a lot of city districts, you'll be allowed to rent it out all year, 120 days, 180 days. You have some rights there. If it's a secondary residence, so it's a investment property, you don't live there whatsoever. In some cities and some states, it's completely illegal to do short-term rental on these secondary residences. So I highly recommend people when they're doing the legal research to go to google.com or your favorite search engine. You may want to even check more than one search engine if you use an alternative one, and type in STR regulations, and we'll just use Richmond, Virginia, for example. So STR regulations, Richmond, Virginia. STR laws, Richmond, Virginia. STR ordinances, Richmond, Virginia. And you'll be looking on the main page, the all page, but then you also want to click over to the news page, because if there's any meetings going on, if there's any latest council meetings, if there's the government is talking about some things, if there's some kind of protest going on, like in Los Angeles, there was a housing crisis, there were like protests against Airbnb, you'll get in the know really quick about what's in the pipeline, what's coming up, because the laws may be supporting you now, but you didn't click the news, you didn't see that in 3 weeks they're, voting to change it, right?
Right. Right. Okay. Okay. So is there anything that typically that you're looking for specifically that stands out to you that like I'm automatically going into these pages and looking directly for this information first?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's tricky to do the research, but this is kind of a new phenomenon, this Airbnb short-term rental entrepreneurial cash cow boom. It's really what it
Right.
is. So a lot of government agencies, they don't really have like an Airbnb STR office. They're kind of like adding these laws or regulations into an existing governing body. And for each city or small village or town or state, it looks different. What part of the government is managing this? What part of the government has been, given the responsibility to regulate it, to, take action with enforcing it? So sometimes it can be hard. Sometimes it's like the zoning people who give permits for construction and things like that. A lot of times that will be the department that's setting the rules, but you'll have to sometimes do a little digging. If you live in a very small town, it may be easier because then you can just call the local, county government and ask directly, and they'll know. Some places it
Okay.
might be more tricky.
Got you. Okay. So basically, do you think that's going to change? I guess the question is you may not have an idea, but as an ambassador, because for a lot of people who don't know, Lauren is an Airbnb ambassador. We'll get into that here in a minute. But the question I would have, do you think there will be some type of established office or a zoning commission that will start to like worry about what's going on with Airbnb predominantly?
I would say this is definitely in the gray zone because a lot of hosts, it's illegal and they keep hosting and they never get any letters, they never get any neighbor complaints, and they successfully host for years without any enforcement. And it's kind of like the law is a technicality, but it's still kind of allowed. So it's it's kind of hard to know. When I was researching Richmond in depth for one of my clients, I saw that I think only 3 letters had been sent out from this office to host, letting them know they
Mm,
needed to shut down. And there are thousands upon thousands of these Airbnbs operating illegally. And so they were even thinking to change the law because it's kind of embarrassing that they're not doing any
anything
regulation.
about it, right? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So just making them look bad. They were like, okay, let's
Yeah.
just revert it because we're obviously not going to enforce it.
Wow. Okay. So we have our research is to basically you want to start with a Google search at least at a basic to figure out what's the short-term rental regulations in your county, district, state, and city. Really and truly.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
will I will give a few extra pointers here. So there may be none. If you live in a small town or a village, there may be zero. And if you don't find anything, it's because it doesn't exist.
Right.
Um, I wouldn't have fear around this. It's really just a first step of due diligence so you can dream a little bit bigger and make your business plan around it. And of course, if you're going to invest $15,000, you definitely want to spend, maybe a few hours just really checking and knowing. I've called office to office to office trying to get information in certain cities, and it's kind of like no one really knows because it's not their day-to-day situation. It's really a teeny tiny part of the law that's new that hasn't been solidified really.